Good morning, everyone. I just came up with a great idea for a new Pokemon game. Picture this. Charizard. That's as far as I got.
The Pokemon franchise is at a crossroads. Sword and Shield, the newest entries into the series, just recently released on the Switch following one of the most polarizing, chaotic, and tense pre-launch periods in the franchise's history. The revelation back at E3 that not all previous Pokemon would make it into the 8th generation ignited a wildfire of controversy and sparked heated debates over Pokemon's priorities as a media franchise, its development process, and the direction of the video game series as a whole. The fault lines of this conflict can essentially be traced down to one central question. Does Game Freak and/or the Pokemon Company care about the video game series? One side feels as though Game Freak doesn't have the passion for creating Pokemon games like they once did, being less and less willing to innovate or go the extra mile with each passing entry into the series. The other side feels Pokemon games are still, all things considered, pretty good and that, hey, Game Freak's a small studio, give them a break, they only make like billions of dollars from each game. As for me, I sadly side with the former. Pokemon Sword and Shield's fall from grace between its announcement and now has been spectacular. Its initial unveiling was thrilling and brought me hope that I would finally get to play the core home console game I had dreamed of. No matter how much I tried, I simply didn't like Gen 7 and it had been a while since I felt truly excited to play a new Pokemon game. But now it seemed like Pokemon was moving on from the mistakes of Sun and Moon, and that I would get to see another Pokemon game that grabbed me like the Gen 6 games did years ago. And then Dynamaxing came along and I was like,
well, we had a good run.
And since then I've continued to see new details be revealed about Sword and Shield that I, on an abstract level, do like, and I feel like I should be excited for things like the wild areas and Galarian forms and evolutions to old Pokemon and the streamlining of raising competitive Pokemon. But I just can't. All of the hype that I wish I felt is overwhelmed by a lurking sense that they're going to double down on the same design philosophy that created Sun and Moon. It's a feeling of grief spawned from the idea that maybe Pokemon just isn't for me anymore. But I know that's not true because I've played several older Pokemon games recently and they're just as good as I remember. So it's not that I've grown out of Pokemon, it's that Pokemon may very well have grown out of what I found so wonderful and alluring about it in years past. I never realized it at the time, but taking a critical look back at the past few years of Pokemon games reveals a growing complacency and apathy on the part of Game Freak and the Pokemon Company. And for that reason, I have decided to forego buying Sword and Shield, at least for now. I do want to keep an open mind, and despite the problems that we know of right now, they'll probably be at least decent. But this is really the first time that I haven't had enough faith in a Pokemon game's quality to buy it immediately. How the Pokemon franchise got to this point is complicated. The fact that not everyone even agrees that the franchise is at this point at all, that's even more complicated. There's a lot that needs to be said, so buckle up and hang on to your virginity because it's time to talk about the National Dex. Can we get it out of the way first that obviously harassment is wrong? Too often I see Game Freak defenders wield the mischief of some bad actors as an argumentative bludgeon that detracts from the substantive aspect of the overall debate.
Bullying is bad.
As easy as it is to go around and parade baseless sensationalist headlines like "Rumor, morale at all-time low at Game Freak," or "Bring back National Dexter caught killing puppies," or "Bring back National Dexter slanders Masuda with false accusation." I made one of those up, try to figure out which one. As proof that all random Twitter accounts with hashtag #BringBackNationalDex are human scum that deserve to never feel happiness, judging a whole group of people based on the actions of an individual is pretty not okay last time I checked. Of course no one deserves to be harassed or sent death threats, but I see it too often used as a deflection from having any actual thoughtful discussion. I don't know what I was expecting, it's Twitter.
We were told that a chunk of the Pokemon roster had to stay out of the newest generation due to the fact that Pokemon was now moving to a home console and Game Freak had to invest more into making a home console quality game that was far more advanced than they had done for previous entries. Gutting the roster was an inevitable sacrifice that had to be made for the sake of more modernized graphics, better visuals, and greater technical prowess. We got T-posing Wingull in the N64 tree.
Now, that isn't entirely fair. Sword and Shield is no Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild, but they're still definitely the best looking mainline Pokemon games to date. Some of the environments are gorgeous, and I'll admit that Little Town gameplay trailer warmed my cold dead heart a bit. Pokemon games have never been renowned for their graphics, and to be honest, I don't really care about them. I think the current graphics are acceptable as they are. But when you make cuts to one of the defining highlights of the franchise and tell us that it's in exchange for a console quality experience with impressive HD visuals and give us Sun and Moon graphics and... then yeah, I think I have reason to be concerned. They have taken away something important and given us very little in return in the way of graphics and specs, despite that being their reasoning for cutting the National Dex, and it was entirely avoidable. The National Dex controversy is about more than just the National Dex. The core overtone of this situation is about Game Freak having to cut beloved features as they attempt to keep up with the gaming industry's endless march towards technological advancement. Unfortunately, Pokemon's jump to 3D and now HD hasn't exactly been seamless, and cruel as it may sound, that stems from the fact that Game Freak just isn't that good at making games. They've always struggled with the technical aspect of game development. The Generation 1 games, beloved as they are, were riddled with bugs and programming errors. It's how we got Missing-No, actually. Gold and Silver didn't have the Kanto region until Iwata stepped in at the last minute and worked some optimization magic on it. The Gen 6 games chugged frequently in battle sequences, and Gen 7 was even worse in that regard.
What is this, me on Monday morning?
Even disregarding the technical issues, looking critically at Gen 6 games and beyond reveals a lot of glaring shortcomings in terms of substance and game design. The chibi diorama models of the Gen 6 games are mostly fine, but they make it harder to leave details of the player's imagination, and they end up looking terribly awkward in sequences where they behave like 2D sprites. Both Gen 6 games were pitifully easy, and X and Y in particular was really lacking in post-game content and stuff to explore outside of the main adventure. Oraz's missing Battle Frontier stuck out like a sore thumb. However, as a trade-off, Gen 6 games had some of the best bottom screen functionality in the series. The secret base mechanic showcased in Oraz was a massive hit, taking some of the best traits of the 3rd gen iteration and expanding on it in a fantastic way with the greater player connectivity of the 3DS. And then all of it got cut in Gen 7 in favor of the cumbersome and needlessly complicated Festival Plaza, Pokepelago, and the useless 10 FPS camera. Gen 7 did shake up the formula in a way where you could point to it and say, see, Pokemon isn't just releasing the exact same game every year. But it didn't really change the structure of gameplay in any meaningful way, and certainly not in a way that felt good or necessary. Gyms have their problems, but I feel like the Island Trials were a total step down, taking away what was good about the gym system and not fixing what was wrong with it. The story was decent for a Pokemon game, but it felt a little disjointed and didn't feel thoughtfully put together like the story of Black and White. It kinda seems like they just mashed together a ton of elements that sounded cool and went with that. I didn't like Lily, Gladion, or Hau.
I'm sorry.
The Ultra Beasts were gimmicky, poorly explained, and just felt kinda pointless. Z-moves were silly, just a less sophisticated or thoughtful version of Mega Evolution, and no one ever SHUT THE FUCK UP! Seriously, the hand-holding was fucking unbearable, you never had room to breathe or play uninterrupted. At the risk of this video turning into a total flogging of Gen 7, a running theme that I'm trying to get at is that Gen 7 had a lot of flair and spectacle, but it floundered on the substance front. The game doesn't stand confidently with what has worked before, it constantly holds your hand and throws flashy features at you that it thinks are safe for pleasing everyone. It's so scared of the idea that you might not be having fun, that it's not any fun. This glaring flaw with Gen 7 is indicative of a lot of the problems with modern Pokemon. It has no faith in a lot of the stuff it creates, and so it's constantly adding and removing features, throwing mud at the wall and hoping some of it sticks. It's why they've gotten more handholdy and gimmicky, and why there's fewer elements to cater to hardcore fans outside of Gen 1 nostalgia. Pokemon is trying to appeal to a casual market. Think about it, the average consumer of a Pokemon game is going to pick it up, enjoy the main adventure, and then put it down and play something else. They aren't going to care that they can't play with all million Pokemon or indulge in an expansive postgame or that the player search system isn't in the game. And the people that do will just buy it anyway. They might be slightly dissatisfied, sure, but it's still Pokemon, it's still good. They already made the purchase, and they'll probably still get the next game. I know I've done that. So now we're stuck in a cycle of Pokemon casting stuff that appealed to the core fanbase to the wayside in favor of elements with a broader appeal to a more casual market. A smart decision from a business standpoint, but from the standpoint of a guy who's adored and obsessed over Pokemon all his life? It's disappointing, and it didn't have to be this way. Something that is surely not helpful with these development issues is the fact that Game Freak is a small studio. According to handy-dandy Wikipedia here, Game Freak has 143 employees total. Not all developers, keep in mind, employees total. More people worked on Epic Mickey 2. When you take into account the relatively small dev team that is also divided among multiple projects and the pressure to pump out AAA quality Pokemon games year after year, a lot of these issues that we've seen with modern Pokemon make a lot more sense. What doesn't make as much sense though is why they have such a small team in the first place. Game Freak rakes in more than enough cash to hire a lot more development staff and put less of a strain on the team when they're faced with these yearly releases and tight deadlines and still make a substantial profit. It seems like a no-brainer, but like I just said about the casual market thing, why invest all that time and money and effort into making a stunning, groundbreaking game on a frequent basis when everyone's gonna buy it no matter what? Why follow the lead of Mario or Zelda and release an innovative smash hit every few years when you can make very similar games that are just pretty good on a lower budget year after year and probably make a lot more money? Whether IGN gives you a 7.8 or a perfect 10 doesn't really matter because the game costs the same either way. Consumers will be drawn to it and enjoy it by sheer virtue of it being Pokemon, and will happily continue to buy new games every year, myself included. Putting in a ton of time and effort into innovating and making truly unique games when consumers would rather get the same game every year seems pretty pointless. Although I'm sure Game Freak still harbors love and passion for the franchise, it's better from a business standpoint to keep with their current practices, especially when considering the fact that the mainline video game series is becoming less and less important to the Pokemon franchise. The Pokemon video games were what started it all. The massive media sensation that Pokemon is today, with its universal brand recognition, massive fanbase, and successful ventures into merchandise, anime, and trading cards, all started in the 90s from a small development studio with a creative vision. The Pokemon games are the foundation of the franchise, providing the central premise of the Pokemon world, the monsters, characters, locations, pretty much everything that every other medium of the franchise builds off of. And then Pokemon Go came along and blew that all out of the water in just a couple of years. Pokemon video games have collectively sold around 300 million copies in 20 years. Pokemon Go has hit 1 billion downloads in 3. Given the buckets of cash that Pokemon Go has almost certainly provided, as well as the release of the new Pokemon Masters app, it's easy to see how the Pokemon Company may view mobile gaming as a more worthwhile investment. They cost less to make and generate way more revenue. It can't be a good sign for the long-standing game series to be overshadowed so dramatically by cheap mobile titles. But even disregarding the growing presence of mobile gaming, the mainline games have been less important for quite a while now. Pokemon is the highest grossing media franchise in the world, and the video game series makes up less than a fifth of total revenues, and they pale in comparison to the number one source of revenue, merchandise. Pokemon video games, mainline and spin-offs, bring in just a quarter of what the Pokemon Company makes off of merchandising. And that's not even mentioning the trading card game, anime, and movies. The video game series just isn't that important from a money standpoint, but the thing is, they are a crucial cog in the machine that creates all that merchandise, cards, and anime. Without new Pokemon games, there would be no new Pokemon to make into plushies and toys and cards. No new characters or regions to base the anime off of. The appeal of Pokemon would wear off eventually without new introductions to keep it fresh and exciting. Pokemon would be nothing without the games, but the importance of the game series isn't because of gaming in and of itself. It's important for the purpose of churning out more merchandise, cards, toys, everything else that brings the Pokemon franchise the bulk of its revenue. So now we have this strained relationship where games need to be pushed out almost every year, but the game itself doesn't matter as much as what it provides to the rest of the franchise, which causes these tight, immovable deadlines and a growing lack of passion on the part of the developers, which in turn causes many of these design issues that have been increasingly common in recent Pokemon games. But ultimately, it doesn't matter if the games have some flaws as long as they're still pretty good and they put new plushies on store shelves, and to that end, they do their job. Perhaps Game Freak knows that Pokemon doesn't really care about their games. Perhaps they know that making an innovative, quality product doesn't matter as much as just having something out by the deadline. Perhaps this has lowered morale and made Game Freak themselves less passionate about the game series. There's been plenty of rumors and little hints in recent years about Game Freak shifting their focus towards non-Pokemon entities, towards stuff they actually care about. But the poor showings of their non-Pokemon games might keep them trapped in the Pokemon machine for a while longer. Maybe this will continue to undermine the appeal and quality of the video game series. Maybe the Pokemon video game series is doomed to a slippery slope of routine, dispassionate vessels for merchandise and other media, pushed by the suits at the top of the corporate ladder at the Pokemon Company International. Maybe the dev team is just burned out from making so many Pokemon games year after year and they just need a break. Maybe the Game Freak that brought us legendary hits like Heart Gold and Soul Silver or Black and White or Diamond and Pearl is gone. Or maybe I'm completely wrong. I sincerely hope I'm wrong about Sword and Shield. I hope that they'll blow me away and rekindle the love for the franchise that I felt years ago. A lot of the stuff that we've seen of the game's pre-release has been pretty good. I like a lot of the new Pokemon, I really like the region design, the wild areas are a great idea, gyms coming back is awesome, and the visuals are way better than any other previous Pokemon game. When you ignore the firestorm of controversy surrounding it and some of the underlying woes of the Pokemon franchise as a whole, our first mainline home console Pokemon adventure doesn't look half bad. At the time of recording this, I don't know how good or bad Sword and Shield are gonna end up being. But who knows, maybe at the time that I'm uploading this I'll be seeing rave reviews from die-hard fans on both sides of the divide. But there still remains the lingering possibility that the games are gonna turn out to be mediocre and be plagued by many of the same flaws we saw in Gen 7. It's possible that the Bring Back National Dex crowd is going to be saying "I told you so" in the face of a new Pokemon adventure that doesn't live up to the hopes of fans that have been waiting for an HD home console Pokemon game their entire life. I am, of course, staying cautious for the time being, but I haven't given up hope quite yet.
The Pokemon franchise's business practice has caused problems for Game Freak and its flagship video game series. While I believe that everyone is entitled to criticize a consumer product that doesn't live up to expectations, it's important to note that a lot of the issues that we've seen with the video game series in recent years aren't entirely Game Freak's fault. From a practical business standpoint, I see no reason why a lot of the problems that hardcore fans have with the series would change when Pokemon is doing pretty well with its current practice. The casual market is simply bigger, and getting new Pokemon out with yearly releases in order to sell more merchandise is just far more lucrative than making impressive passion projects on a slower schedule. All we can really do now is voice our opinions and hope that something ends up changing. Sword and Shield has some promise to it, but sadly I'm not holding my breath for now. On the bright side, I finally fleshed out my idea for a new Pokemon game. Get this, 2 Charizards. Yeah, maybe it could use a little more work.